Next.
Orange.
Cascara de naranja. So this one, I want you to take the piece. Don't put it on yourself yet. As you keep putting, you're like turning yourself into bitters. He's like, spray, I'm like, no. Okay, so the shiny side. I want you to spray it into your hand. You see the oils, okay? Now smell that. Write down 3 things of what orange smells like. Escribe. My Spanish is getting better. Escribe. Everybody, 3 things? Okay, tell me some things. Citrus?
Fresh?
Fresh? Juice? Tangerine? What about spices? Do you all of a sudden feel like it smells like lavender a little bit? Pine, yes. Think of things that you have orange peel in. Does it taste or smell like anything? Like different liqueurs, like different cocktails you've had, like different desserts, different foods. Keep going. Keep going. Orange is not a tasting note. I mean, it is. But if you can't see that it's orange, do you know it's orange? Most people don't. Think of wine again. When you swirl that glass of wine and you have to explain what it smells like.
Flowers.
Flowers, great. But maybe not lavender, maybe jasmine flower.
Jasmine, yeah.
Maybe there's a bit of green cardamom there, right? Maybe, why are you laughing?
It smells like Paulo.
Smells like Paulo, fine. It has to be tasting notes that everybody can relate to.
Everybody smell Paulo now, please.
No, this is what I'm saying. It's a good lesson. It's a good lesson because unless you know what he smells like, it's not a good tasting note. Right? Fine. Okay, everybody for 3? Okay, next.
La cardamom. Cardamom negro.
Black cardamom. Smell it just as it is. This is one of my favorite ingredients. It's so different, it's so exotic, it's so interesting.
Mint.
Meat?
Smoke.
Yeah.
Oak.
Smells like meat, right?
Oak.
Smoke.
Oak.
Yeah.
Oak.
Okay, now
Wood.
I know that it's a little bit tough, but see if you can press it a little bit. Mole. Chilies. Cacao. Salica? What's that?
Peppermint.
Okay, now press in your hand a little bit. You should be able to break it ever so slightly. That gets the essential oils going. You can taste it. Listen, I've eaten everything on this table. Okay. Bueno. Everybody has 3? Amazing.
Con esto hacen los jals.
Now, put it back.
Con esto hacen los jals, ¿sabías? Mira, prueba esto encima. Ah. ¿Cómo lo abriste?
So unless you taste things, it's very difficult to know if your nose was correct because your nose represents 90% of what you taste on the palate. That's why people in wine tasting and spirits tasting don't taste anything until the very end. It's really hard for us to resist tasting things, but our nose gives us all the answers. And for me, when I do tastings of individual ingredients and I try and test my palate, test my nose, if it's in closed containers, okay, so as an example, you put the black cardamom into a metal container, like a shaker, with a little spritz top on it so there's holes, and you smell. Do you know that is black cardamom? What does it smell like? It could be so many things. We get tricked all the time, and we do this at The Johnny Walker experience at Cardew Distillery, because Johnny Walker has 4 very distinct flavor profiles. Fresh fruit, cooked fruit, grain, citrus, baking spices. There's so many different things happening in these whiskeys and these spirits that having these little smell containers where you can stick your nose in and try and guess what it is without tasting or seeing it. Okay, so everything that you wrote down, try and see if you can pair a classic cocktail to the tasting note. So lavender as an example. What spirit would you use? And what type of cocktail do you think is the best showcase of lavender based on the tasting notes that you pulled? So for example, let's give you one example. For me, I think lavender is very delicate, it's very elegant, it's very floral. I wouldn't have this as a nighttime cocktail. It feels very refreshing, sort of like morning. I might like this as maybe a Ramos Gin Fizz, as an example. Maybe all the tasting notes that I get from lavender might be best suited to making a lavender syrup for the sugar in my Ramos Gin Fizz, and make it classically in the same way that you normally make it. Cream, egg white, 2 citrus, sugar, gin. Why would gin be so perfect with it? Well, gin is blooming with botanicals, so that's why we automatically think of things like gin to pair with something like lavender. Do you think the makeup of Tanqueray number 10 could be an appropriate match for lavender? Whole fruit distillation, juniper. There's juniper on the table, so don't forget to have a smell and a taste.
Ahí tienen juniper en negro pues en la mesa.
Now,
Sí, ya lo van a conocer.
when we're making bitters,
Hay una bolita negra.
if we want to create different flavor profiles, we can't be afraid to blend things. You have to understand that the more ingredients you add, the more methodical you have to be in the proportions that you add them. Lavender, albeit quite light and elegant, is very powerful. If you add too much, it tastes like soap, right? Just a light touch of something can modify the bitters in the same way that a light touch of something modifies a cocktail. We are using alcohol as an extraction, Kettle One vodka, which is delicious. It is neutral. I use quotations because there's a lot of flavor in Kettle One, but it goes back to this thing of you don't make bad wine choices when you cook. You only cook with good wine. So why would you make bitters with garbage grain alcohol? You should use something good, right? Because we want the finished product to taste just as delicious from the base spirit as it does extracting the botanicals. It complements the flavor. So, I love these pictures. We're sort of like wrapping it up here. I think we got 2 slides left. Top left, these are the 2 photos, top and bottom on the left, are photos that were given to me by my friend Pedro. He's from Mexico, but he owns a rare tea company, and he doesn't focus on Earl Grey tea and rooibos and all kinds of things. He uses his nose to find new flavors of teas by going directly to Yunnan province in China, or going into different places where they produce matcha and sencha green tea in Japan, or perhaps oolong tea, where there are people rolling this fermented tea as it's just damp enough to form into little balls. Now there is oolong tea here, and it'll be interesting when we open it to see if it's granular or if it's rolled. When it's rolled, now you understand why you pay a little bit more for that tea, because these are hand rolled little teas. On the top right, this is one of many different types of rosebud. They're dry. Now, the thing I want to leave you with to think about is that when you use dry ingredients, there's no water content, which means it will extract perfectly for an extended period of time in alcohol. The higher the alcohol percentage, the more it acts like a deep fryer. Okay, so as an example, flowers, these are just here to trick you. Don't put these in your bitters. These are interesting for us to pass around, and we can have one and have a bite and pass them on. Yeah, just here, I'll help you. I'll take this big floppy one. Flowers have a lot of flavor. The one I just had tastes like lemons, and the one that I had earlier today tasted like almonds. These are edible flowers, so you should eat them because they all taste different. So it's very important that we taste things. Don't be freaked out, just stick it in your mouth. So these roses are dried, so we use them in bitters. The reason why we don't use those as fresh products, it's a little bit more complicated, because if you imagine taking something like a head of lettuce, which is like 99% water, and throw it into a deep fryer, what happens? The deep fryer actually explodes, right? Because water and oil are not soluble. Just in the same way, you take flowers, fresh flowers like that, and put them into alcohol, I think you've got about 15 minutes before it starts to turn those flowers into hot garbage, you know? So if we do use things like flowers, or if we use things like fresh mint and fresh oregano and fresh basil, we want to add tiny quantities in the last probably 3 or 4 days of our extraction. Or you put it in first and you take it out 2 or 3 days from now. Don't let it sit for longer. Okay? Oh, lastly, this on the bottom right, this is a tea blend, but this is no different than what you're doing today with spices. There is tea on the table, but when you combine botanicals and spices together, before we put alcohol, it should look like that. You should have a combination of different colors and spices and flavors, and again, don't be afraid, but just know that at this end of the table, these are the ingredients you use the least amount of. At the top of the table are the ones you use the most and have the highest water content. So, the next time you look at a bottle of bitters and you taste it and you think, these bitters are pretty good. Whatever bitters they are, know that every single person had to do what you're doing today. And we don't have the luxury of labs right here. We have the luxury of our palates, our minds for creativity, eyes for color, blending things together. These are the people that are responsible for harvesting the tea, harvesting spices. Where's that weird bark we had? Remember that weird one? Yeah, I see the bag. So these are the ones, this is the bark that we're not going to use because we're not entirely sure what it is. And it was $4, so we don't trust anything that's $4.
¿Han almorzado o no?
No, we don't know. We don't know. And Rafael's face, he says, maybe you want to use it. I don't know. I mean, it smells like wood, but we don't know what it is. But this is spices, you know? This is no different than canela. It's no different than cinnamon, right? This gets curled off the tree in the same way that this does. A very specific type of tree. And then it's hand rolled. Every single spice you have on the table here has been picked by somebody. And it's like in this part of the world, this is all photos from China. And they're all harvesting tea. It's pretty cool. And no machinery. The measurement is how many oxen and how many days. If anyone's seen the movie Under the Tuscan Sun, they had this crazy measurement of how to measure the acreage of the property the house was on that you wanted to buy. And it said, oh, well, the size is, takes 2 oxen, 5 days to plow. What? So, I mean, this is before machinery, before the measurements. So I'm going to leave this on the screen. This you do have in your package, which we should look at. It's on the last page. This will give you, up here it is English, but in your little pack there has the Spanish translation of some notable ingredients that you should just learn about. We have burdock and dandelion. Dandelion is on the table. We have sarsaparilla on the, no, we don't have sarsaparilla, I'm sorry. Oh wait, yes we do. Yeah we do, we have sarsaparilla. Sassafras is something that is used commonly in root beer, but is regulated by the Food and Drug Administration in the US, which means there are some elements to this ingredient that could be dangerous and not good for you. The same way tobacco, the same way as tonka beans. So we tend to not use this. Oak, white oak, American oak, French oak, limousine oak, Spanish oak, French oak, sherry oak, whatever oak. Oh. Chincona, we don't have on the table right now, but that's the quina or the quinidine. Angelica, we have on the table.
No.
We don't have gentian. So gentian, has everyone here seen Batman Begins? It's like the first Christopher Nolan one with Christian Bale. You remember when he's at the bottom of the hill? He says you have to take this blue flower up to the top in Tibet or wherever he was. That's gentian. Okay? So it's the root. Wormwood, we all know wormwood, right? Absinthe. That's the psychoactive ingredient in absinthe, which most absinthes were banned from the US until 2007. I don't know if anyone knew that or not.
2007.
And then chicory. Chicory is a root, which is quite interesting. And these we might not have here today, all of them, but they're things for you to know about, which are quite cool. In places where they don't have coffee, but they would like to brew something in the same way as you would brew coffee, like in New Orleans, chicory coffee is more popular than actual coffee. And that is used by roasted chicory or endive root. Okay, so I'm going to leave that up there. Let's see if there's any questions. I don't know where that little thing went. Oh, it's here. Does anybody have any questions? Oh my gosh, did we cover everything? You guys are so on it. Damn it! Broke my streak. Hold on, don't say anything yet. Oh.
No, Mike.
Okay, bueno. No, I have no.
Hola, hola, hola.
Don't worry, everything's okay, it's just an earring. Hola. Okay, go ahead.
¿Cómo estás? Yo sí tengo una pequeña duda en el caso de la... Por ejemplo, utilizamos las pieles cítricas, ¿ok? Pero si quisiera hacer con passion fruit, maracuya parchita, no se le dice por acá, ¿qué recomiendas? ¿Cómo podría hacerlo? Igual si de repente quiero hacerlo con esta fruta mucha agua, la patilla, sandía, ese tipo de frutas, ¿cómo puedo trabajarlo? Gracias.
Okay, this has hardly any water in it, versus, where'd those limes go? Versus the whole fruit. Can you hold up a whole orange? Whole orange? Okay, whole orange. This, juice. That is juice. This, dry and bitter. So, passion fruit, because passion fruit has a high water content in the same way that orange juice does, we want to use that as a modifier in the cocktail. If you add ingredients that have too much water, it dilutes the flavor of the concentrate that you make with the spices. It's easier for you to add passion fruit as an ingredient to the cocktail instead of adding it to the bitters, because the bitters don't become bitter anymore. They become almost like a Fernet. A Fernet is palatable and potable in the sense that you can drink an ounce of it, but it's not very sweet. That's what that would create. If we want to keep the integrity of the bitters at a high alcohol percentage, it doesn't go bad, then I only put in dry ingredients. But I love passion fruit, so putting that in as a modifier into the cocktail. The same way we use like watermelon, the same way we use pineapple. If you want to use pineapple, use the skins, right? Don't use the flesh. You can use the skins. And what Rafael did is he actually peeled all the fruit and then he dehydrated it. So this is ready to go. You can do this for 30 days if you want. Oh, it's English. It's just that one is dried and one. So,
¿Cuál es la diferencia entre el que ella mostró ahorita, o sea, el normal que pelas, y el que ya está deshidratado?
La cantidad de
so
agua.
a good example of this is if you take
Esta peor que tú,
a
Gustavo.
chile, okay? So imagine you have a,
Parece de Guatemala, ¿viste?
yeah, okay. Imagine you have a chile, okay? Chipotle
Chipotle.
pepper, which started as a jalapeno. Jalapeno has a very specific flavor when it's fresh. The moment you add heat, because heat is what dehydrates ingredients. Heat will caramelize ingredients. So even though this has been smoked, it still has a flavor of jalapeno, but it's completely different. It still has a spice, but it's different. So this is very fresh. You bite into this, it tastes like fresh orange peel. You bite into, well, I mean, it's pomelo, but you bite into a dried piece of orange peel. It tastes like it's been caramelized. It tastes like it's been cooked. That is the byproduct of what happens when you dehydrate ingredients. They taste different. So when you have fresh cardamom, it tastes completely different than the dried cardamom. And also, what's another good example? Oh, hops. So hops we have on the table as pellets. Part of the intensity of these ingredients is that they have been dried. It's removed all the other moisture in the ingredient from the product. So it just gives you the pure flavor of what that botanical is. But a fresh hop is equally delicious, but it's just harder to get and harder to preserve. Hope that answers the question. Up to you. I use both. In our bitters, we use fresh and dry. So it's up to you. There's no wrong answer. Use dry, use fresh, use combination. Up to you. Gives completely different flavor. Another question in the back? Okay. Wait.
Here.
Wait. First. Okay, go ahead.
Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo le va? Mi nombre es Miguel. ¿Cómo va? La pregunta mía es la siguiente, con el tema de lavanda. Hice una infusión con lavanda, pero la dejé más de 15 días y eso se oxidó. Quiero saber qué pasó en ese momento, en qué fallé.
With flowers, fresh flowers or dried flowers?
Flores secas.
Okay. They're very delicate. What I say, and we taught this a lot in world-class studios with Heat of the Moment, to care for individual flowers and ingredients can be quite challenging to know what to do in the moments. So what the recommendation that we made, if you want to make an infusion with lavender, because it is quite delicate, you know that, you've touched it, even though it's dry, it's a flower, right? I would do the same thing with like rosebuds. I would start with a lower alcohol percentage. So, for example, I would take the Kettle One, and I would, using a hydrometer. A hydrometer is a tool that measures alcohol density, and I would take spring water, or even the flavor of Perrier I quite like because it tastes like a little bit of salt in there, and dilute the Kettle One down to an alcohol percentage that can care for fresh ingredients. Think about something like sake. So sake is sometimes around the same alcohol percentage as wine, right? So maybe 10 to 15% alcohol. We know we have to keep it in the fridge once it's open. The same with vermouth, the same with sherry, anything that is under 25% alcohol. So if you take the Kettle One and dilute it down to like 15%, we can add the flowers, store it in the fridge, and it will gradually, over time, extract the pigment and extract the flavor and the character of the flower because you're bringing the water quantity up higher, and the flowers have high water quantity. So the higher the water quantity in something like the flowers, the lower the alcohol percentage needs to be. Does that make sense? So if you want to add lavender to your bitters, you can add a touch, because it's not a lavender bitters that you're making. You are making something that has the hint of lavender as a tasting note. So I hope that answers your question. That's the best way that I can describe it. And if you don't want to dilute the alcohol down, you can take something like dry vermouth, white vermouth, sake, Pinot Gris, wine, whatever, and you can add flowers to that and store it in the fridge, but you will get some of the flavor of the wine that you're infusing it into. So that's why I kind of like this, because we can dilute it down, it's still fairly neutral. And then when you're ready to make like a liqueur or something from it, then you fortify it back up with Kettle One or a different ingredient if you like the flavor of something else. Ciroc coconut, thank you, my favorite.
Por acá.
and then bring it back up to like 40% alcohol. Hold on, must get the thing. Hola.
Hola, por acá.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. Mi consulta es que
Oh, I don't hear you.
qué cantidad de especias yo pongo.
Aló.
Aló, aló.
Okay, try now.
Hola.
Oh, now I can. Now I can. Yep.
Listo.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
¿Por qué?
Okay. ¿Qué cantidad
Que no
de
entiende muchas
especies,
palabras, imagino.
podría mezclar?
Lo que pasa es que en alimentos pasa eso siempre, que cuando uno traduce
Porque hay
hay muchos
algunos que pueden
ingredientes que cambian de nombre y uno no está familiarizado con eso.
Unas no.
Tú eres traductora,
Por
pero no
ejemplo, si yo
traductora de
voy a
alimentos,
mezclar
¿me entiendes?
Café no quedaría bien con limón.
Café y limón, ¿hicieron?
Ok. Debe haber alguna cantidad específica de especias que se puedan mezclar y otras no. Por ejemplo, si yo voy a mezclar café con limón, eso no debe pegar bien.
Pegar bien.
Personal perspective, okay? I think coffee and lemon go quite well together. And for example, in Italy, they probably argue with you because they like to put a little lemon peel with their espresso, you know? I would say it's personal preference. If you personally don't like the flavor of lemon and coffee together, don't put them together. If everybody did what everyone else did, we would have a lot of the same flavors out there. So I would say, if we're gonna make a note right now, okay? This end of the table, right here, okay? This end is the least amount of product you use. For today, we're going to maximum of 10 grams. You can do anywhere between 0 and 10 grams of anything on this end of the table. Okay? This is to make like 400 mils of bitters. The middle of the table is a maximum of 20 grams. In whatever combination you like. You can use 5 grams nutmeg, you can use 2 grams of bay leaves, you can use 3 grams of dill seed, you can use 20 grams of cinnamon. The more you use of one specific ingredient, the more the finished product is going to taste exceptionally high in that flavor, complemented with other things. Okay? So if you want to make a coffee and cinnamon bitters, or we don't have any coffee, if you want to make a chocolate cinnamon bitters as an example, then put more cacao and put more cinnamon, but the other flavors that in your opinion go well with those, you complement. Otherwise you make extracts. We want to make bitters. We want to make a combination of different flavors and ingredients. I quite like the flavor of cardamom with cacao. I quite like the flavor of chile with cacao. I quite like the flavor of star anise with everything. So it becomes very personal, right? And then this side of the table, this is your fresh ingredients. You can choose to put up to 30 grams, because they weigh the most, right? Because there's water content. So up to 30 grams, or less, whatever you want, a combination of different things. But with things like the fresh herbs, you might want to put in like 20 to 30 grams, but you might want to give yourself a reminder to pull it out after 4 days, or you go and taste it after 4 days, taste it after a week. And if it starts to transform a little bit and you don't like the flavor, or you see it starting to wilt, then you can pull it out. It's no problem. I hope that answers the question, okay? Up to 10, up to 20,
I'm sure.
and up to 30.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, hold up.
Hello?
No, I can't hear you.
Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Maybe did Paulo turn it off? Paulo. No, you didn't. You didn't. No. It was on last time. Okay, hold on.
Ok.
Paulo can translate. Go ahead.
Ok, Pablo, por ejemplo, si... Will Smith. No. Por ejemplo, si quiero hacer un bitter con un material sólido, por ejemplo, manzana o el plátano, ¿cómo haría?
No, I have to reset this one.
If the salt is like banana or apple. Banana.
Yo lo deshidrato y hacemos una plata en casa.
Dehydrate the banana. So, I don't like banana chips you can buy in the store. I would like to buy fresh banana, really ripe banana, you know, the ones that are starting to turn a little bit black. Slice them up, dehydrate them so they're no water, and use them in your bitters. I also like to take the
Deshidratado,
peel
¿no?
of fresh banana,
Deshidratado.
it's quite bitter, and cut up just a few pieces in the same way that we use product on this end of the table, up to 10 grams. Dehydrate that also, and use that as part of the bitter. For apple, skins. Skins. And if you want, you can use fresh skins. If you don't like the skin to be fresh, then you can dehydrate. But I would say fresh skins for apples, and then for bananas, I would cut them up and I would dehydrate them.
Continuamos. Antes que se me vaya la idea del compañero, siento que como un bitter, usted lo había dicho antes, tiene que estar compuesto por agua, alcohol, azúcar, ¿no? ¿Sí? Si utilizamos el banano, y es muy difícil deshidratarlo porque su composición de agua es mucha, no lo vamos a poder utilizar a la perfección, diría yo. Pero si utilizamos la reducción del plátano, que suelta un tipo de almíbar cuando se hierve, eso lo podríamos agregar al bitter después para que tenga una tonalidad y un sabor totalmente diferente a lo que cualquiera de nosotros podamos conocer. No lo he hecho y pienso que eso sería una buena manera de utilizarlo. Y la otra pregunta es si tenemos diferentes ingredientes que tal vez afuera del país no se conocen, pero nosotros investigamos sobre él y descubrimos que tiene propiedades tónicas. ¿Podemos utilizarlo igualmente o tenemos que hacer una investigación o, qué sé yo, ver si se puede utilizar de verdad? Por ejemplo, el cardamomo. Una vez tuve una competencia donde una doctora estaba compitiendo y ella decía que el cardamomo, si se utilizaba en mucha cantidad, podría tener efectos laxantes en el cuerpo humano. Y eso me dejó pensando a la hora de yo elaborar un bitter de cardamomo porque no quisiera hacerle daño a un cliente en mi barra. Gracias.
Okay, yes, sí. Gracias, Paulo. Okay, first question. The reason why we add sugar to bitters is because the alcohol doesn't taste very good. That is the same mentality that is used during Prohibition, when we had some cocktails that came out and they weren't very good because we were using bathtub gin. So we add sugar and citrus and lime cordial and all kinds of ingredients to mask the flavor of alcohol. Good bitters don't need sugar. You can be the person that adds sugar to the cocktail. And I think more people, the way that we drink today, because we drink better and we don't drink more, it's very different than Prohibition. I think people will appreciate the opportunity to say that they would like something sweet or not sweet. So if you have bitters that you can sweeten to order, that's great. What I would say in terms of the banana, I would do what you were doing with making the banana reduction in the syrup, and that syrup, why not fortify it? Okay, take something like Kettle One or Don Julio tequila, and from this exercise, if you eat and smell ripe and sort of like ready to eat bananas, write down tasting notes. The flavor of banana will always be present and will always be aggressive. But it would be nice to fortify it and bring it back up to a certain alcohol percentage to make a liqueur or to make a syrup. And you fortify it with something you've infused with the spices you like with banana. Does that make sense? Cool beans. Second one, anything in large quantities is incredibly bad for you. I realize that if I drink more than 10 coffees a day, I'm probably going to die, okay? So
Me too.
coffee even though it's not necessarily bad for you, you still need to manage your consumption. Drinking too much water, if you drink more than 1 liter of water for every 50 pounds of body weight, that's not good for you. So I think everything in moderation is fine. In traditional Indian and Chinese medicine, they use in very specific quantities because they need whatever the medicinal ingredient is in this. And that's what separates medicine from flavor. We make garam masala, we make different spice blends, Chinese 5-spice, in a very specific quantity to put in very specific quantities into food. So, don't be afraid to use cardamom, but it's very easy to get the flavor of cardamom from a very small amount. You don't need a kilogram of cardamom to make a liter of syrup. You need 3 pieces of cardamom. Give yourself time. Preparation time is the difference between making something properly and making something terrible. Does that answer? Okay. Everything on this table, okay, is safe. Nutmeg in large quantities, not good for you. But you're not going to use more than grating it on top and a tiny little thing in your bitters, you know?
No es tu culpa.
Yes. Okay?
Buenas tardes. Bien, yo creo que a todos nos gustaría tener todo eso que está ahí en nuestras barras. ¿Hay alguna compañía que tú nos recomiendes que venda productos, pero buenos productos de calidad? Porque no, bueno, la pregunta más específica, para ir al grano, es recomendable utilizar la tabla aromática para estudiar las especies? Pero, por ejemplo, este cardamomo que acabo de probar, el negro, es la primera vez que lo veo así, no se siente igual que las tablas aromáticas que yo he catado. Entonces no sé si eso sea bueno o malo, estudiar de la mano, o qué tan recomendable tú lo ves para nosotros, una tabla aromática.
Okay, I have so many recommendations here. Thank you. Every single thing on the table was legally purchased in Panama. So everything that's here you can get. And if you have questions on where to source certain things, then speak to Rafael or speak to Carlos. And, yeah, no problem. So what I would say, if you would like to bring things into Panama that are not available here to make bitters, that is your own risk that you take. And it has nothing to do with us or me or Rafael or Diageo. You do whatever you want. Just don't tell us about it. But what I will say is that things that are available here are legal and safe for you to purchase without getting a prescription. If you have to get a prescription, it's regulated and it's potentially dangerous. For some reason, it's been deemed dangerous. Everything that is on this table, if you're trying it for the first time and you would like to catalog the smell and flavor so you know how to use it, you can study how to use it, I would make everything on this table into a tea. Okay, so you take hot water, 140 degrees Fahrenheit, you take a little bit and you pour it on one botanical, and you come back in 30 minutes. When it comes back to temperature, and you swirl it, and you almost engage just like wine, and you start writing tasting notes. You eat things the way they are. If you want, you can take a little piece of something, put it into cold water, and you have to leave it for a lot longer. So maybe you come back after 4 to 6 hours. You can taste the liquid, but then you can taste the actual botanical if you want to taste it raw without being cooked by hot water. Those are the only ways you can do it, unless you buy a smell kit, which are quite expensive, which are sold. You can buy them on Amazon, you can buy them in lots of places. They're not regulated, but they are expensive, which is a series of essential oils, which are cataloged by number, and it is specifically made as a smell test, so you can smell the difference between cooked citrus, lemon peel, orange peel, cooked orange peel, grass, bison grass, blades of grass, hay, rye, American oak, charred oak, alligator charred oak. You know, like it has every single flavor note that we could possibly pick up in the wine and spirits world. And so I think it's a great investment if you want to do that. I don't think you have to. I think you can do that quite easily by dining in places that you don't often dine, trying different types of food, different types of beverage, and before you jump in to taste something, smell it. That's the only way that you can learn it. Make a note on your iPhone of what the flavor profile is, and that will drastically help you. And I think that's the more affordable and the more hands-on approach to doing that. Yeah? Okay?
Hi.
Okay, go ahead.
Hola.
Hola.
Bueno, antes que todo, darte las gracias por compartir tu conocimiento con nosotros, Lore. Mi nombre es Jimmy Espinosa y mi pregunta es la siguiente. Habías recomendado, dijiste que entre tus ingredientes preferidos era el cardamomo negro. Y la pregunta es, ¿qué otro ingrediente está entre tus listas de preferidos que me podrías recomendar? Ah, ok. Aparte, o sea, es como una pregunta doble, ahora se convierte en una pregunta doble, porque ¿qué ingredientes puedes recomendar que están entre tu lista de preferidos y cuáles no?
I do not recommend anything that is illegal. Okay? I don't recommend anything that has a disclaimer at the bottom that says could hurt people in large quantities. I'm not a fan of things that could make me sick. I don't need to take the risk on having something that might be exotic and interesting, and potentially it has harmful effects that I might feel immediately or later in life. I'm not really interested in that. We're animals. Animals, naturally, when we're sick, we gravitate to things that don't taste very good because we know that they have medicinal properties. That happens in nature with animals in the forest. It also happens to us. We know cough medicine tastes terrible, and we gravitate to that when we're sick because we know it's going to make us feel better. That is what bitter ingredients are almost alerting you that they could be harmful if taken in large quantities. You wouldn't sit there and drink a bottle of cough syrup, right? You wouldn't drink a bottle of bitters like this. We know that's not going to be good for you. My favorite ingredients are things that are picante, things that are spicy, because for me, I grew up eating habanero and Scotch bonnet salsas with my mom, so therefore my palate has changed. So for me, I don't need things to be blow your face off spicy, but I like a little bit of kick of like black pepper even, or a little bit of kick with a chile. See, guajillo peppers right here are not spicy. These are aromatic chilies. Just because they are called chile doesn't mean that they're spicy. Chipotle, on the other hand, is very spicy. Not as spicy as a ghost pepper. And this is an arbol chili. And an arbol chili, generally the smaller the chili, the spicier it becomes. So I think, I love all ingredients. I think, I'm a tree hugger, right? I'm from Vancouver. On my day off, I would like to go into the forest, hug trees, name trees, different names. Like I have plants at home that I call human names. I'm a total weirdo. I like everything that comes from nature, okay? So there isn't one flavor I dislike, except for tobacco. Tobacco, disgusting. I refuse to drink them in competition. Okay? I know 100% that tobacco is bad for you, because smoking is bad for you. If you choose to smoke, and I smoke occasionally, whatever, doesn't matter. Putting tobacco in your food and beverage is not smart, because you shouldn't give somebody else something that is unsafe. And you should have a full disclaimer if you're using something like nuts as an example. Nuts are almost just as dangerous. Everybody has, like, there might be people that have these dormant, undisclosed allergies to nuts that they don't even know about, or to bees, or to pollen. So even things that we're not used to using, anything that is exotic is something that is not used in our culture frequently. So I don't know if you get bee pollen here, but it's not part of my culture in Canada. We get it as a specialty ingredient, but you have to disclose that that ingredient is in something so the guest can make the decision if they want to take the risk to have that or not. That's what I'm saying. When we make cocktails and we make bitters, it's best to stick to the things that you can answer the question why. When a guest asks you, what is it about tobacco leaf that makes you want to make a bitters from it? Isn't it the same tobacco that we smoke? Yes. Okay, that is a terrible answer. You should be able to explain why you use tobacco in your bitters. Why do you use things that you know are not good for you in things where you're trying to create flavors and experiences and make people happy, right? So just be able to answer the question why when you want to use different ingredients.
Hola, buenas tardes. Me gustaría saber qué tan recomendable sería el uso de productos en una fase de fermentación, ya sea el caso, por lo menos acá que abunda la piña, qué tan recomendable podría ser, ya que en esta fase adquiere sabores distintos, tiene una acidez un poquito más alta. A ver qué contradictorio podría ser.
Listen, fermentation is the best. So many things we eat every day are fermented, and maybe we don't realize. Cacao beans on the table right here are fermented. Tea leaves are fermented. Kimchi is fermented. Pickles are fermented. Vinegar is fermented. So much of what we eat every day is fermented. The difference is, it tastes good. So if you ferment something and it tastes questionable, you're like, I don't know that I really like it. If you don't like it, it's your